Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Q&A video. Today is video number 132. And in case some of you guys don't know, what I do in this video series is I answer questions that I receive in regards to small engine repair. Again, I want to thank all you guys who send in questions, but unfortunately I do not have time to answer them all. So today I'm going to touch on a few questions that were sent to me recently. So I'm going to get into the questions right away. The first question I have is, can I install an inline fuel filter on a 2-cycle engine that runs on mixed gas? Well, the answer to that is yes. Also, the YouTuber was worried that the oil and the gas would eventually clog up the fuel filter, but again, don't worry about that. Just replace the filter once in a while, like every year or two, and you should not have any problems. Oftentimes you will see a small fuel filter on these little outboard motors, and these little motors run on mixed gas as well. This is just a small inline filter and it can save you a lot of problems by trapping in the dirt. As you can see here, there's still a bit of fuel left in the filter. So again, you can put in an inline fuel filter on your 2-stroke equipment. Now another question I got in regards to outboard motors is, which way should the primer bulb point when it comes to installing a new one on my fuel tank? Now somebody probably asked me this because there are arrows on the primer bulb. You would always want to point this toward the engine, so basically that's the flow of the fuel. When you squeeze it, the fuel will go up here and straight up to the engine. If this arrow is pointing and heading back toward the fuel tank, it's not going to prime your engine. Your engine will not run, and you could be stumped as to why it's not running, especially after putting in a new primer bulb. I've noticed that a lot of people do not realize this, that these have to go in one direction only. So always take a close look at your primer bulb before installing it and make sure to point the arrows toward the engine. In one of my videos, somebody saw this Evinrude in my shop and they were asking me questions about it. Well, basically I got it as a parts machine. Somebody gave up on it because it needed a lot of work. So now it's mine, and basically I'm just going to sell it for parts or use it up for something else that I may come across. And here's the inside of it. Everything's there. It needs a coil over here. As you can see, one of them is off. And it's also got a brand new fuel pump over here. So basically this engine has spark problems. It's got problems up here in the handle where the switch is. I haven't had it running, so I can't tell if there would be further issues after it does start. Another question I got is, why do you cut such thin pieces off the logs when you test out a saw? Well, the reason why I do this is to save my logs so I don't use them up so fast. What I do is I get some logs brought in like this and use them for test cuts. I still burn these thin pieces and my logs last a lot longer when it comes to doing test cuts. It can get expensive to buy logs or get them brought in. Fortunately, I got these for free during the last storm we had in July here. So we ended up having a lot of trees down in my neighborhood. Anyways, that's the answer as to why I cut these so thin when I'm testing out a saw. In one of my last Q&A videos, I showed this older McCulloch chainsaw that needs a coil. And for those of you who don't know what a coil is, it's the ignition module around the flywheel that creates spark to your spark plug. And the reason why the saw is still sitting here is because it is a bit harder to get parts for older saws like this, especially when it comes to the ignition module or coil. So the point I want to make today is, if you're going to buy an older saw and it's got no spark, make sure that the ignition module or coil is still available before you buy it. The reason why I say that is because some of the parts are no longer made for older saws, and when you go to buy them, if you can find one, it may be very expensive to the point that you will say to yourself, is it even worth spending that much money on an older saw? And also sometimes you can put the ignition module into the saw, and after that you start it up and there's more problems with the saw. For example, it could have carburetor issues or crank seal problems as well. Sometimes what can happen is that these older saws can turn into a money pit. You can spend hundreds of dollars into them, and at the end of the day, they still don't run properly. So count the cost first before you fix up an older saw, because sometimes it may be cheaper to just go buy a brand new chainsaw, even if you have to spend a bit more money, but in the end you're going to have something good. It's not to say that it never works out with the older saws. It's just when it comes to ignition modules, it's especially harder to get those. Somebody asked me the other day, is it normal to have oil in the bottom of a chainsaw case when you go to take it out? Well, my answer to that is no. When you go to pull your chainsaw out, you shouldn't have a big puddle of oil underneath. Basically, I'm saying that to have excessive amounts of oil in the bottom of your case is not normal. But it is, however, normal to have a bit of oil in the bottom because sometimes you just finished using your saw, you put it in, there was a bit of oil on the chain, and it drips down. In this situation here, the case is nice and dry. I've had the saw out of the case for quite a while. But when I stored this saw after using it, there are little bits of oil underneath on whatever it's been sitting on. But again, if you have excessive amounts of oil in your case, you should get it checked by a mechanic to make sure that it's not leaking where it should not be. Often on these small saws, what ends up being the problem is the oil tube or the oil cap over here. Somebody asked me the other day if it's worth cleaning a carburetor on a Chinese generator. The reason the person asked me this is because you can buy the carburetors on eBay fairly cheap. Well, my answer to that is yes, it's worth in some cases to try to clean the carburetor. I usually try to clean a carburetor anytime before I replace it. And if the power's out and your customer needs their generator right away and you do not have a new carburetor in stock, then it is definitely worth cleaning it to try to repair your machine. Now, this may sound contradictory a bit, but if you do have a brand new carburetor in stock and the customer needs it like right now, it's probably better to just put a brand new carburetor on the generator and let the customer go with it. What you have to think in that case, if the power's out, is that some people would rather pay a little bit more to get their machine immediately. So think about the downtime before replacing a carburetor. But in most cases, if you do have carburetors in stock, which you can purchase fairly inexpensively on eBay, if your shop rates are high, it's cheaper to just put on a new carburetor for the customer. Because it's not always a guarantee that after you clean these carburetors that they're going to be okay. I've took off carburetors 3-4 times off of machines, cleaned them in an ultrasonic cleaner, cleaned them manually, did everything I could, and they still did not work properly, so I wasted all that time just to end up putting a brand new carburetor on the machine in the end anyways. It's something you're going to learn over time. You're going to notice that in some situations it is cheaper for the customer and better for you as the mechanic to just replace the carburetor right away, and in some other cases it's going to be better to just clean the carburetor and try to get it going the way it is. So this will be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Have yourselves a great weekend and make sure to come back in 2 weeks to see my next Q&A video.